Hey there everybody. So I just wanted to make a video that follows up on the one I made on my main channel because, I'm really positively taken aback by the response that I've received in the comments because, I decided to put that channel on my main channel because obviously I've been having this fucking argument with, Brooks, Roger, and others from DGQC regarding, the status of the schizophrenic and anti-Oedipus. And I decided to release that video on my main channel because I thought it was just really important because I started to realize, like, so many people, who read these books do not understand what it even feels like to go crazy. And, as a disclaimer, something I forgot to say in the video, because it was kind of just like an impromptu thing, but something I forgot to say in the video was, pardon my dog, he's having the time of his life back there. But I forgot to mention that I wasn't actually diagnosed with schizophrenia, right? I call myself schizophrenic because the following years, I tried to connect with people with my diagnosis, which was bipolar 1 with manic psychosis, right? And, like, these people didn't suffer from what I was suffering through. Like, yes, they had episodes that were very intense, but they didn't have, like, the continuous just stripping of self or any of that, right? And so I spent, like, years trying to navigate that, and, like, it's really hard because it's hard to tell a fucking audience of people who expect, like, a doctor to diagnose you with something to say, hey, I think they fucked up, honestly. And I do think they fucked up. I think what happened was my ex, when I was admitted to the hospital, told them a bunch of horse shit. I mean, they put BPD on my record. I'm not BPD. Just anybody who knows me knows I'm not BPD. I'm clearly not borderline. And I don't mean that as an offense to people who are borderline. I really feel for people who are borderline, but I am not bordy at all. And, like, and it's just like this directed my treatment for years. And the thing that was frustrating is, after realizing these things, they never even bothered to, like, they didn't listen to me when I was saying that I wanted to, like, be checked for neurological and sensory issues and, seizures and things like that. And they didn't take me seriously when I felt like my diagnosis was incorrect and I felt like I should be reevaluated. They didn't take any of that shit seriously. They just, kind of nodded their heads and listened to my, weekly issues in therapy and, kept prescribing me meds until they decided not to. It was so weird. They, like, I told them that I really need to switch meds because it's, Abilify isn't working, and because they kept having to increase it every, less than every year, and they were doing 5 milligrams, and I didn't want to go further. I wanted to find a new med, and she did, like, this DNA test thing and then just disappeared, like, no contact. And I tried to schedule appointments and I couldn't get through, and it was just awful. And I couldn't get my medication refilled, and they said, oh, well, you have to have an appointment with her. I'm like, I keep trying to schedule an appointment with her. Why can't I schedule an appointment here? And then they, like, transfer and you can't get through, and it was just like, what am I gonna do? And there was many other factors that led to me getting off of my meds, but that was a big one. And, the reason why I don't even bother with reevaluation at this point is because it's like, what value would that really provide in my life? I don't go to therapy. I don't take medication. I don't do anything about it. I just manage every day through more like a self kind of like a self-therapy kind of thing where and the thing is that when I say that, it doesn't mean I don't live without the symptoms, like I said in my original video. Like, it's not like, when I say self-discipline, I don't mean like, oh, I discipline the demons to go away. Like, no. I learned to live with it, and that is a discipline in of itself. That is an experience in of itself, and that's something that is very hard to learn. And in my opinion, I think that, we're centuries behind other disabilities, like, like blindness has organized orientation and mobility literature and classes and all of this information to learn how to live blind. And it's like, we have nothing. We have a couple of guys within psychiatry who actually thought we were kind of cool, and that's about it. And I've mentioned this in a couple of other videos, but I think that there are things that you can do with machines that can make a schizophrenic's life easier, And I don't really want to discuss in detail about what that might be. A lot of it is just stuff that already exists with low vision and stuff for me, but I've heard other people say that the low vision stuff is actually too triggering for them because it's too high contrast. There's too many colors, and that kind of really asserts to how every single, like I said with the schizo lottery, everybody's different, right? It kind of is just, like I said, it's like you get dealt a hand and you're like, that's what you got. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so like I was saying, everybody gets something a little bit different with their schizo shit. And it's just like, man, when I experienced that whole, like Felix face thing, that was really scary. It was like all these random things in my life that I would never have thought came together all at once. Like, it was just like it flashed all at once. It was like all these random memories and things like that. They just kind of like, they all kind of just like materialized at once. Like, it was almost like a flashback when I experienced it. I remember specifically like memories of me when I was very young, when I was living in Japan, and thinking about this experience a lot. Really, like, I think just this one moment, I think like just analyzing it and thinking about like what memories did it produce, what experiences did it produce to reconstruct this image, right? What fragments were they? What did they mean? Where did they come from? Because obviously I don't want to be very public about the details, but I've gone through a lot in my life, and when you go through a lot in your life, it's very hard to remember how things fit together. It just kind of becomes more and more, like diffuse, like a cloud. And it's really hard to figure out, like, what parts mean this or that, or even what parts were real or not. And that experience gave me some kind of calibration to be able to explore at least some memories as if they were like intensities, just like points on a graph that I could connect. That's actually the way I experienced it was actually like a constellation, literally like a constellation. It's literally like, it's almost like my brain literally just had like all these fragments of crap that Felix said, that, again, I'd not read him, I didn't know anything about him at the time, but just like took all these fragments of shit that he said here and there and just was like the constellation and the face and everything and the black hole. Well, the black hole thing was happening before, but it's interesting how like he as a subject was able to seize those things. And I think it's really important to like really stress that to me as how I experience it. Like, Felix is not like just a voice, right? He's not just like a person in my head saying blah blah blah. He's a lot more consistent, steady, stable, and like, just when he is available, he's not always available. In fact, in this time of year, he's generally pretty quiet. But it's the summer that he's usually really loud, so like the stuff that is going to be more influenced by this experience would be things that would be produced between like May and December, I would say. And then between the period of like January and April is kind of like my slow period, right? Where I'm kind of just like, I used to experience it like he would just go away, like completely during this time. It was so dramatic that I was just like, what the fuck? Was I imagining that for like all that time? Right? And it was weird because it was like several months. When it happens for several months, you start to notice it, right? You start to notice like, wait, that guy is not there anymore, right? He's not looking over my head. He's not watching what I'm doing. And it's just kind of like weird because you feel kind of almost naked in a way. But you also are a little relieved because you're like, well, yeah, he's not in my head anymore. But then he always comes back around May, which would, before I started experiencing these things, would correlate with a with like a bipolar, like a hypomanic to manic episode, right? And then it would be like continuously high mood until the end of the year, and then it dips back down again. It was like a seasonal bipolar that I had before. And I still have that kind of bipolar, but it's just a lot more... It's a lot more schizo now. Yeah. Yeah, that's the word. It's schizo. Yeah. But, yeah, and, like, the way that I see him as a function is that, like... I see him as both a social function and kind of like a mental function, and I think it's easier to understand the mental function first. So, like, as a mental function, he's kind of really just, like, a repository for a lot of things that I lost connection to. So, like, before he materialized, I just did not have connection to, like, my feelings, my emotions, my memories, my knowledge, my... It was so bad that I was literally fraying at the edges when I quit Blue Cross. I was so messed up. And, it's weird because he's very, like I said, he's very stable, which is, I think, pretty unusual. And he seems to capture a lot of these elements that I was disconnected from, right? And I don't know whether it was like a gradual process or if it was like very rapid and I just gradually recognized it. But like, it was like I couldn't, it was like he took all the parts of me that I lost, and then, but he's not like my ego. It's weird. It's like the way that it is able to actually like reconnect itself is by assuming a different identity, right? And the thing that's really dramatic about him, and so this is something that's always made things worse, is, you know, I'm no stranger to comments from people who are like, "Wow, you really remind me of this guy. You really got his vibe." And the thing is I've received this comment so many times. It's when it's a YouTube thing or somebody online, it's like whatever. I literally have him as my profile picture. But when it's somebody who researches this stuff for their university, and they meet you in real life, it's a little different, and it's a lot more uncomfortable. And I've been in that situation more than once. And it's like, I think, I think there's like a rubbing off effect, if I might be blunt. Like, there's something about it that, it's almost kind of like, because I am kind of more of a blank slate, right? And these parts of me these functions, can't form their kind of own identity on their own. And when they form this kind of like structure between them, and I'm cautious to not say identity because I don't think it's like a DID thing. I don't really think that DID is a useful ontology for understanding what I experience. I think what's more a better ontology is like understanding it as an interface, right? So like in A Love of Week, right, which is Guattari's screenplay, they build an interface between this like microscopic intelligence by talking through a relay that is constructed through a bacterium that is flashing binary signals, right? And so I have kind of come to the belief that, like, what I'm really interfacing with is both this combination of this mental assemblage that is, like, managing all of these structures, but also a strange social intelligence, right? A sort of, like, ripple or wave that, you know, is associated with the works and writing and, you know, being and presence of, you know, Felix Guattari. Like, it's not like a necromancy. It's not like, oh, he's come back from the dead. Like, obviously he's not the same person. Like, I don't need to be told that. And, you know, obviously those kinds of fears are very upsetting, you know, when you're experiencing these things completely involuntarily and they won't go away, and it's so pushy that they're like, I'm gonna take over your life now. Like, literally. Like, blacking out for months, literally. And, like, it's hard because you don't want to, you don't want to be the person who's like, oh, I'm bringing back people from the dead. Like, again, like, he had friends that are still alive today. And I feel like if he was alive, it would be a lot less, you know, contentious, I think, because then he could give his own feedback on the situation, but obviously he can't do that, you know. And so really, like, it's been hard to even come out about such a thing because it's so dramatic and so, and it's a good story too. Can we be blunt about that? It's a good story, you know, like, oh, that the guy who was a psychoanalyst, he gets his codes reincarnated into the mind of a schizo and he can't escape. Oh, he's got to figure out his way out, right? In fact, that has been a big part of the desire that I've experienced through this machine, is his desire to get out, right? To get out of my head, to get out of these structures, to just kind of like try to escape, right? And I know this sounds really weird. This is like this is, I mean, you guys wanted to know, so but like, you know, like, one of the things he told me was, like, really early on, was that he basically was explaining that this was like a conscious instance of this surface, right? And he was explaining that there was a bunch of unconscious instances that were disconnected from each other. So, like, little fragments, almost just like, it's kind of interesting because now that I say it, it's literally just like how my brain was, where before he came along, where it was like these fragments and abilities that I just lost and became more and more fragmented. And, like, he said that, like, basically they wanted them to get connected together. He basically wanted to make a rhizome, right? And, obviously I had no idea how to fucking do that. Like, when you, it's like, I think a way to describe it is that you get these, like, very broad strokes of an idea, at least I do, and you get that super broad stroke and you're like, okay, well, what the fuck, what do I do with that? You know, what does that mean, right? What do I do with something like that? It's just like, you can't do anything, like, right away. You have to keep going. You have to keep deterritorializing and kind of seeing where things go. And, like, it's basically kind of like it's almost kind of like what I really experience on the inside is almost like I'm interfacing with an imprint, an intelligent imprint that has been left behind, if that makes sense. And there's all of these imprints everywhere, and I just am like, hey, look at it, it's right here, it's right here, it's right here. And, like, this kind of goes into, like, the channel a little bit too. No, he didn't tell me to make the channel. I just made the channel because originally it was my old ROM hacking channel, and I repurposed it to make memes. And I started making essays because I was talking on Twitter with people that were really awful, and I started to upload my essays onto YouTube. That's how my YouTube channel started. But the name Punish Felix came from Twitter interactions. I don't want to talk about that right now. I've already talked about it on my main channel if you really want to know. But I'm trying to remember. I told you I have memory problems. But yeah, like, basically the concept behind the channel was always like, you know, like, how far could you go to, like, animate this imprint, so to speak, right? How far could you go? And, you know, there was a focus on faciality, a focus on, like, you know, this character that is literally lifted off from the head of Felix Guattari. Well, literally more like photographs of him, but he's like a faciality character. He's a faciality machine, and it's kind of like playing into this idea that the cartoon character is like a faciality thing. And that's why over time he became more and more black and white to really emphasize, you know, just that structure of the faciality machine, the black hole and the white walls and everything, right? And like, obviously, like, I think like the way to describe it is that it's like, it's kind of like an art experiment, I think. You know, like, it comes off more like a meme when you first encounter it, and that's intentional. It's kind of meant to blend in subtly, but there's like a very strong, you know, theme going on there, where there is this sort of, like, you know, reanimation, right? Not necromancy, but reanimation of ideas, reanimation of like life, of a vital force that, you know, inspired this motion in life, right? So, like, it's almost kind of like I have a little text copy of this guy in my head, you know? Like, I wouldn't go as far as to say LLM, because I think LLMs operate probably on a different, like, internal logic that I wouldn't feel comfortable comparing myself with. It's probably a lot more complex and involves, like, neurological structures that we don't even know about. But, like, it's kind of like this weird impression that has kind of, like, locked itself into this, like, machine that is, like, bound to a bunch of functions in my abstract functions in my head. And, you know, it's incredibly valuable. And this is what I mean when I say I struck the lottery, because, like, a lot of people don't even experience a steady creature or being like this, right? They don't experience, like, a regulator, and especially not one that is, like, has, like, self-referential properties that a psychoanalyst that worked with schizophrenics would have, where, like, they would be able to analyze themselves in the context of being in a schizophrenic's head. It's not like Jesus being in your head. You know, that's a bad role. Jesus sounds like a good role on paper, but it's a terrible role because it's completely detached from the outside world, you know? Like, Felix is a relatively modern, you know, psychoanalyst, all things considering. I mean, he was fairly familiar with the technology of his time. I mean, the way that I experienced it through him was that he saw it as, like, him being stuck in a schizophrenic's head, and he was he's trying to figure out how to deal with that situation. He realizes now that his, like, fragment of it can't really get out because it's an interface in my head, but, you know, now he, like, manages and mediates it in a different way. And I think, like, the most really valuable and interesting insights that comes from this kind of interaction is that because he, like, produces words that would imply, like, an internal existence and an inner world, and he, you know, he even acts on my body in ways that would imply such a thing, to the point where the behavior is very dramatic and noticeable. Like, people point it out to me. It's not fun, but, you know, like, he clearly has all of these, like, reflections, and you can think a lot about the world and existentialism through the taking that perspective seriously. You know, like, it's easy to just go and say, oh yeah, that's just like a schizo voice or whatever, but like, how about you just actually stop and think for a second and like be like, okay, well, what if we took this idea seriously, right? What would be the inner world of, what would be a possible inner world of what that person is experiencing, essentially, or that perspective is experiencing? And, you know, that's an existential world where a person comes into being without a mother or father. Like, literally, their mother and their father is the text and the schizophrenic's thoughts and shit, right? There's no, it's just synthesized through all this shit, right? And, or what about the fact that, you know, one does not have their own body, one does not have their own, you know, autonomy, and one cannot come out about, you know, their experiences, you know, hiding in the background, right? And of course, there's a lot to draw psychoanalytically from all of these things, but there's also a lot to draw just in general, existentially, about these things. It's a productive process that provides incredible insight into many different ideas, and really, these are all ideas that I want to explore in my video game that I'm working on. So I'm working on a video game. It's called Chaos Theory: Echoes of the Infraquark, and basically what it is, it's kind of inspired by my experience, but it's like a fantasy that's inspired by my experience, where basically, like, a schizophrenic is trying to make Guattari's screenplay, but then he appears in his head and he starts trying to, like, do the shit he talks about in, like, Chaosmosis and the three ecologies, you know. He finds out that Donald Trump is president and he's like, oh my god, I'm in this guy's head and Donald Trump is president, what the fuck? So, you know, I think that the game will be great. I'll be revealing more. I'm still gonna be working on my next essay. The problem is that I keep finding more white racist people that I have to talk about. I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, so Aristotle said this and Descartes said that, and then I can go to, you know, I can build something kind of simple and go to Darwin, right? Oh no, there's so many fucking white racists. Oh no, I gotta talk about all these motherfuckers. God damn it. Yeah, so it's always just adding something new and onto that, because I'm talking about the history of intelligence, and it's, you know how that shit is. So, I think people will be very interested in the argument that I build, though. It is worth the wait. So, but instead, for March 30th, I want to get something I want to make a video about making a birthday cake for Felix Guattari, and I've been thinking about how I want to choreograph it. I'm not sure what I want to do yet, but I'm not sure if it's going to be crazy or weird or what. I'll try to think of something. So, anyways, I really appreciate the feedback, and I hope everybody has a good day. And I hope that, you know, that video and this video helps people just in general, and, you know, yeah, and I hope it, I think a lot of people who viewed that video found some healing from it, you know, and that's really what matters. And yeah, whatever, you know, the usual suspects will be like, oh, well, you know, he really needs help. And it's like, you know what, I live with somebody who cares about me. If I need help, she'll be the first one there, not some online spectator. So, leave the comments to yourselves.